So you go back to the US without having seen her and you still continue to talk to her? It's really wild to me. What is up, you guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's your girl JD here, back with another video, and today we are going to be diving into 90 Day Fiance before the 90 days. So I just posted, I believe that was 90 Day Fiance the other way. This was the tell-all for season 4. You guys can check that out in the corner here. I had quite a bit to say, so it was a little lengthy, but I promise you it's worth watching. But I do feel overall when it comes to the tell-alls that they don't tend to ask all the right questions. Here and there, I feel like Sean, I think is the name of the host that they usually use. I think she does a really good job with keeping things under control for the most part and getting some information out of the cast members, but I feel like she from time to time doesn't really ask what really needs to be asked. It's kind of like that elephant in the room. But besides that, okay, we're going to be talking about the Before the 90 Days season 6, I believe we're on. So I only watched the first 2 episodes of the show thus far, so that's all I'm going to be discussing. There are 6 couples in total. We have Amanda and Razvan, Riley and Violet, Gino and Jasmine, Tyree and Carmela, David and Sheila, and lastly Misha and Nicola. So hopefully I am not botching that. However, when it comes to Misha and Nicola, they haven't been introduced as yet. They come in episode 3, so I don't have anything to say on them at the moment, but I'm sure when, you know, we finally get introduced to them in the next episode, I'll finally be able to have something to say to you guys. Today, we're just going to be discussing the other 5 couples. So let's start off with Amanda and Razvan. So Amanda is 31, she's from Louisiana, and Razvan is 26 and he is from Romania. When it comes to their backgrounds, Amanda has just recently lost her husband, unfortunately earlier in the year. She does have 2 children, and I believe her husband was the only man that she's ever been with. So it does seem obviously particularly hard on her, losing her husband and also having to now raise her children by herself. It's a whole unfortunate situation. I believe he passed away from cancer just a couple weeks after even getting his diagnosis. So one thing I do want to mention though is that, you know, it does seem a little quick, okay? I'm not going to glaze over that part. It does seem really quick to be diving into dating right after your husband passed away that same year. It just seems very questionable, and I don't want to, you know, say that, but it is very questionable. You know, it's like I feel sorry for her and her kids, but at the same time I have to give her a little bit of a side eye, because it's just like, have you even given yourself time to grieve and catch yourself and just be by yourself to figure everything out before you bring somebody else into your life on that romantic capacity? You know, it's just kind of like, I don't know about that. It's very side-eye-ish to me. Moving on to Razvan, he is a social media influencer. He takes his shirt off a lot. I think he does most of his work on TikTok. I think he has over 100K over there. So he does go live on occasion. He would get, like, you know, tokens, I think is what you call it, or whatever it is that you could exchange for money. So that's kind of how he makes his money. Ultimately, that is his job. And I think on occasion he also does a few acting gigs here and there, but because acting is kind of difficult to break into, it takes a lot of time and you need money in the meantime. So the TikTok thing is kind of how he makes his money for the most part. But of course, Amanda doesn't like that. She feels as though these women, you know, they're getting a little too much of him. I could see how she would feel a little insecure about that, for that to be his main job and source of income, for women to to be in the comments telling him to take his shirt off in public. It's just really kind of weird. In the second episode, she does finally go over to Romania to be with him, for them to, you know, obviously meet for the first time in person. So it is a little awkward. They do have a few kisses shared here and there, but Amanda does make it clear in one of her confessionals that she would need a little bit of time to get used to being with someone else besides her husband on a physical level. I give her that. Yes, you do need space. However, I feel overall you shouldn't even be in this relationship yet, you know, like with anybody, let alone Razvan. And for someone, I don't like judging people based on their age. However, it does often play a part into the demise of these relationships on 90 Day Fiancé when there is a little bit of an age gap and when it tends to be a matter of the man being younger than the woman. In my opinion, okay, that's just what I observed, my analysis. Y'all could, you know, disagree with me, but that's just what I tend to see. That's the going trend. And it does come to Razvan though. We find out from one of his female friends, which is going to be quite interesting when I think Amanda, since she's in Romania now visiting him, when Amanda meets that female friend of his, that might be a little weird. I don't know. It really depends. I don't know how that's gonna go, or if she's ever going to be able to meet her. I don't know. But either way, we find out from Razvan's female friend that he actually was married before and he is now divorced. So I'm trying to figure out, I'm like, okay, so did you tell Amanda this? Like, does she know this already, that you've been married? It's like he seems accepting of like all of Amanda's things. Like, she's a widow, she has 2 kids to raise, so he'll eventually have to step into the stepfather role. He seems very accepting of that, but I don't know if he was able to tell Amanda yet about, you know, the whole fact that he was married before. I don't know. I don't know if she knows all of his information, you know? But anyways, he seems like a person that doesn't really keep secrets. He seems very open. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Moving on to Riley and Violet. So Riley is 48. He's from Pennsylvania. Violet is 43. She is from Vietnam. And it does seem as though these two are in a very interesting point in their relationship. Riley and Violet seem like they both don't trust each other. I think Riley's reasons are the fact that he has been in a past relationship where he has been lied to. He had a whole relationship with someone and they just up and disappeared on him. Then also with Violet, I don't know what exactly happened with her. I think she was married before, has 2 daughters now. I think her issue came up with the fact that he was still on the dating app, so she wanted to make sure that he came off, but he went back on after saying to her that he deleted it, or deleted his account, whatever, and he found that she was still on the app. So it's just kind of like, okay, what's going on? So of course Riley's family members, because of his past dating experiences and whatnot, what's happened in the past for him, they are definitely questioning this whole situation, definitely questioning the fact that she's still on the dating app even though she's asking him to delete his stuff. And they're trying to figure out, like, do you even think it's still worth pursuing? Do you think you should still go to Vietnam, because he planned a trip to go and visit her and her 2 daughters in person? So he's still trying to figure out, like, is it worth it? And on top of that, he's now hiring thinking about hiring a PI, or private investigator, in Vietnam to investigate Violet to see if she's lying about anything else. When he had first started talking to Violet, he was like, you know, do you have anyone? You married? You're good? Are you single? All that type of stuff, right? And she's just like, yeah, no, I'm divorced. Like, everything's good to go. But then we find out later on that the divorce wasn't really even finalized yet. So she technically wasn't legally single yet. So Riley definitely was like, okay, why are you lying? You know? So I understand his hesitation when it comes to Violet, and obviously with her kind of being untruthful, or maybe not telling the whole truth, which me personally, I still think that's being untruthful. But it's like, I don't know what other things she has in her closet and how bad this whole thing is going to get after Riley goes to Vietnam. I just personally don't know where this is gonna go, but it's seeming very interesting thus far. Let's move on to Gino and Jasmine. Okay, so Gino and Jasmine, they are a returning couple from season 5 of the show, and Gino is 53 from Michigan and Jasmine is 35 from Panama. So that is a pretty big age gap there. When it comes to Gino and Jasmine, They are crazy. They're probably one of the most tumultuous couples, mainly because of Jasmine. I feel like Gino is very strange. He's a very weird man to me. I don't even understand the attraction really from Jasmine, but hey, do you? Can't even say it's because of the money necessarily, because he's not really filthy stinking rich either. But he has a job now, okay? During season 5, he didn't even have a job. He was an engineer, but I think because of C-19 and all that, he had gotten laid off. So he was giving all this money to Jasmine. You know, Jasmine was actually costing him so much money, especially when he went to Panama. Pretty much guilt tripping him into a lot of stuff, okay? She was like, don't you think I deserve nice things? Don't you think I deserve to be, you know, on this nice vacation? Like, I deserve this. And Gino's just obliging her, giving her stuff. And I'm just like, Gino, even his family members are looking at him sideways like, what are you doing, bro? Like, what are you doing? At some point, you gotta take a stand for yourself and your finances. You can't just be spending money just because Jasmine feels as though she should have this, this, and that. And even at the beginning of this season, we see him trying to invest into some hair extensions or some packs of hair extensions that are like $500 or $600 per pack or something like that. And she needed like 6 or 7 packs. And he's just like shelling out the money, shelling it out like, oh, it's all good, you know, I got you. And I'm like, Gino, you know you don't got it like that. He also had to dish out money to pay for a visa for her during this whole visa process because it's been taking so long. He decides to go to Panama, visit her. But before that happens, we find out that Jasmine was actually let go from her job that she had back in season 5 when we first met her. She was, I believe, an English teacher or something like that. And she seemed to really like her job. She was making a decent amount of money. However, Gino was still paying for quite a few things here and there for her, even though he didn't have a job. But because of Gino at the end of season 5 sending an explicit photo of Jasmine, I think she was completely in the nude, I'm not sure, and Gino had sent it as a means to, I guess, make his ex-wife jealous. And Jasmine already had issues with him even having an ex-wife. You shouldn't have even been with anybody else before me. She was mad and throwing a tantrum in season 5 about the fact that his ex-wife's decorations are still in the house that they shared together. It's like, girl, what? Like, aren't you just happy that you have a house? If you guys decide to get married, it's really bizarre to me how she was just throwing a whole fit in that gym during that scene. I was like, really? Over some curtains? Wild. But for some reason, Gino thought that it was going to be appropriate to send a very explicit picture of Jasmine to his ex-wife as a means to make her jealous, and the ex-wife eventually sends out this picture to who I don't know, but somehow it ends up in the possession of Jasmine's workplace, and they eventually fire her. So she has no job and doesn't have any work, nothing to pay for her lifestyle. And even though Gino was, of course, paying a little bit of her bills and stuff like that here and there, now he has to pay for everything. And on top of that, we find out in this season that she convinced Gino to have both her and her cousin, I think, move into a high-rise apartment on the coastline, paying like $3,000 or so a month. It's just really kind of weird to me, their relationship. It also opens up, forgot to mention, it opens up to Jasmine trying to get her down there parts tightened because she feels as though her and Gino's sex life isn't as great as it could be because of that. And that's kind of the reason why he doesn't like to end their escapades with her. He has to go into the bathroom. A lot of information that you, of course, did not ask for, but Jasmine did unfortunately give us all of that information in the first episode. So yeah, she has a conversation with her friends, and her friends, I think, got her some butt plugs. Oh God, I just, even saying it kind of grosses me out. But hey, do what you do. I do not need to be seeing this. I just feel like Jasmine just shares too much information. And the fact that Gino shared that picture at the end of season 5 and Jasmine still took him back. It's just like, girl, are you crazy? I guess she just sees him as a consolation prize at this point. Now that she's lost everything and he has a job, it's just like, okay, your turn to pay for everything for me. Maybe that's what it is. When Gino finally landed in Panama too, she pretty much mauls this guy's face with her mouth, okay? It wasn't a kiss, it was just like sucking face, and it was just a lot, and everybody had smudges of lipstick on their face. I was like, what am I watching? It was really disturbing, and it lasted way too long. Ugh. Anyways, also Jasmine looks as though she might have a guy friend that Gino might need to look out for. An ex-boyfriend, actually, believe it or not, that she's still talking to on a friendly level, which I personally think that you really shouldn't be friends with your exes unless you guys have kids together. If you don't, like, why do you guys need to be friends? That's personally how I feel. We're gonna move on to Tyree and Carmela. So Tyree is 33, he's from California, and Carmela is 27 from Barbados, allegedly. So when I say allegedly, we find out some things about her later. So Tyree, he actually has quite a bit on his plate. I think he's a very selfless person based on what I've seen. His mom unfortunately had a tumor. I think shortly after the doctors had removed it, she ended up having a stroke. So she kind of lost, I think, some feeling in her legs, so she wasn't able to walk. She now has to be in a wheelchair. She needs to be, you know, assisted in obviously moving around and doing things for herself. So she had to move in with him, and he's basically like her full-time caretaker at this point. We find out that he was actually talking to this girl Carmela through Snapchat. They were also sending some dirty pictures and videos to each other, but they never were able to FaceTime. They had been talking for about 3 years at this point, I think. And we actually find out pretty quickly into, I think, the second episode that he was actually being catfished and that Carmela was actually a man. And yeah, he was getting sold a dream. So we find out actually that he had decided to go to Barbados to visit her at one point as well, and she didn't show up. And I'm like, how do you not find it weird that you guys have never FaceTime, number one? Number two, how do you guys still continue to talk even though you went all the way to her country to meet her for the first time in person and she doesn't show up? Like, not only did you have to buy the tickets, spend money on the hotel, spend money on your stay, transportation, you also had to quarantine because it was around the C-19 time. After you quarantine, you hear nothing from her. So you go back to the US without having seen her, and you still continue to talk to her? It's really wild to me. The fact that you didn't think anything of that is beyond my understanding. I'm trying not to judge him because he does seem like a really nice guy, but just a little too naive, okay, which we have seen time and time again that people have taken advantage of here, specifically on the 90 Day Fiance franchise. Way too many episodes and couples where people think they're in a couple and it's not. That's not the case, okay? So it's just wild to me that he goes on to say in one of his confessionals that, you know, he's watched catfish and it's just crazy that I would be catfish. So I personally don't think that she's really a catfish. I feel like maybe something was misunderstood. And he even shares the recording that the producers got from this guy pretending to be Carmela, and they play it with Tyree, and his siblings had actually come to give him some support as well. We also find out from his siblings that he doesn't really share too much, so they didn't even know he was in a relationship. And the fact that he's been talking to this person for 3 years and now they find out that they're possibly a catfish, it's a lot to take in. And I feel like his siblings, they seem like very supportive siblings, unlike others that we have seen on this show in the past. But I think that they're also very protective with good reason. So I think that when it comes to Tyree and his situation with Carmela, it is going to get a little frustrating. Obviously, the producers, they did very early on in the story expose the whole catfishing thing. So yes, they are going to need to have some other storyline to go off of so that Tyree could continue to go on in the show. But I think that Tyree also personally wants to find out who this person actually was. He doesn't want to hear a voice on a phone recording. He wants to actually see this person. So he eventually flies over her to go and meet this person. Do they show up? I don't know, but that's kind of where the clip ends. So he's on a plane pretty much heading somewhere, I think Barbados, to go and visit who this person is, who's been playing him for all these years. And also we find out that Tyree was sending Carmilla money. Yeah, so at first he wasn't going to, he wasn't giving her anything, and then he kind of gave her a little bit of something at one point, and then started giving her more, and it was just kind of like, my guy, what are you doing? Especially for a person that you still haven't seen. Like, anyways, I feel like Snapchat is obviously, that's obviously a place for catfishing because everything disappears and it's not FaceTime. I feel like most platforms you could catfish on. If we think about it, most platforms, but particularly Snapchat, it's very, very easy for you to be a catfish over there. Either way, that's what's going on with Tyree, because we can't really say Tyree and Carmilla since Carmilla might not even be a real person. So yeah, but moving on to our last couple, we have David and Sheila. So David is 42 and he's from Nebraska, and Sheila is 33 from the Philippines. So we find out that David was actually born fully deaf, and he actually grew up in a all-hearing family. So it sounds as though more than likely they didn't really know how to communicate with him, and he didn't really know how to communicate with them either. So I'm pretty sure that childhood was definitely a struggle for him. Sheila, she was born hearing, however, something happened to her eardrums, they burst, and over time she had to start using hearing aids to be able to hear. But I think over time, eventually she won't be able to hear at all, even with the use of hearing aids. She does have a son, and I think she does actually live with her parents as well in the Philippines. We found out that her house had actually caught on fire, and it also was hit by a typhoon shortly after. So the house is definitely very damaged. I think, you know, at one point also David was sending Sheila some money here and there to try and help with things, because obviously, you know, in the Philippines, in terms of making money, there isn't really much. And also what she was doing, which I think was like selling snacks and stuff or some type of items, she wasn't really making much money from that. And now she has to sleep in a damaged house with her son, it looks like. So yeah, it's just a lot going on with Sheila. And with David, I think he's now taking the time to go to the Philippines. And it's really crazy that you don't think about a lot of these things with regards to being deaf. Him being in an airport, he's not able to hear announcements. He actually has to have someone physically come and get him because he can't hear the announcements. If there's a gate change or a flight change or time change, he doesn't know. So he has to wait until someone actually comes and get him. And even when he was trying to check into his flight, just talking to the airline check-in assistant, he had to kind of like sign to her a little bit, but she wasn't really understanding too well. So it's really just so many things that you kind of take for granted that other people have to do in different ways. He's heading over to the Philippines. I'm sure he's really nervous about that, considering that number one, he is deaf. Number two, not only is he heading to a foreign country that, you know, they don't really use ASL sign language like that, but they don't even really speak English everywhere in the Philippines. So he has to now figure out how to communicate with people in that regard. So that's the challenge for him coming over to the Philippines. Also, Sheila's parents are putting a little bit of pressure on her to ask for some money to help out with rebuilding the house, fixing the roof, because it is wild. Looking at the video footage of it, it's bad. And I feel really bad for Sheila, honestly. She, you know, has to live in a really dilapidated house if you think about it. And also you hear that she's eventually going to lose her hearing. It's just like, wow, that's a lot. David, in the second episode, he has a lot of his family and friends being really kind of, you know, standoffish with the whole relationship that he has with Sheila, and also him going to the Philippines to visit Sheila. So I'm hoping for the best for them. I'm rooting for them. I find it interesting though that they aren't able to really communicate that well with each other. Even though it sounds as though Sheila does know English, she doesn't really sign like that. So I'm wondering how they're going to be able to communicate well, especially since they're, you know, a couple. So that's pretty much all that I have to say about these first two episodes. You guys could of course let me know your thoughts on the couples down in the comments, but I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.